How's it going, everybody? Handsome Dan here with episode 11 of the Grand Tournament. This event has suddenly gotten a little more interesting, with everyone now just moments away from either tying up the event or taking home the gold. If you missed any of the previous action, make sure to check out the full playlist in the description below. Taking a look at the scoreboard, you can see that after Derek was held winless for 8 episodes, he's now tied with me at 2. Caleb and Jelly are still sitting at 3, but they haven't been able to pull everything together just quite yet. We'll see this time if either of them can get that last win, or if Derek and I are going to catch up to the lead. Let's go to the decks and to the starting hands. Last game was a real close call for Caleb, who was just a turn away from taking home the gold with Golos. Caleb's goal is to try to replicate last game and slow things down enough for him to make a ton of mana and hit a big combo win. Caleb will be keeping a starting hand with Zagoth Triome, Marsh Flats, Polluted Delta, Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, Forest, Approach of the Second Sun, and Soul Ring. Jelly's only deck left is Talrand, which means he's going to have to try to get things going much faster than he has been. Jelly needs to hit some early cantrips and counterspells to let him build up an army of Drake tokens and take over the board. Jelly keeps a risky starting hand with an Island, Soul Ring, Negate, Reality Shift, Treasure Cruise, Washout, and Capsize. I'll be bringing back Winota this time, trying to finally get some momentum going for the stacks and aggro snowball. It's only been awkward starting hands so far, but this time things look a little bit more promising. My hand contains a Windswept Heath, Jeweled Lotus, Chrome Mox, Aven Mind Sensor, Gold Knight Commander, Gold Myr, and Boros Charm. Finally, Derek is going to look to run it all the way back, breaking up Varina for game 11. This is a zombie tribal deck that goes wide and uses Varina's ability to help fill Derek's graveyard and go for a mass reanimate or a combo win. Derek keeps a hand with a Mana Confluence, Misty Rainforest, Clearwater Pathway, Arcane Signet, Phyrexian Altar, Demonic Tutor, and Gleaming Overseer. I win the pregame die roll this time, so I'll be going first. I'll get the party started with a Windswept Heath, then lose a life and crack it to get a plateau to the battlefield. I'll then play a Chrome Mox, exiling a Gold Knight Commander, and use my open mana to cast a Spirit of the Labyrinth. Derek is only going to play a Misty Rainforest as his land for turn, and then pass. Jelly starts with an Island, then taps it to cast a Soul Ring. Derek will also be cracking his Misty Rainforest to go get a Hollowed Fountain tapped. Caleb plays a Forest, and then plays his own Soul Ring. Back to me, where I'll keep the momentum going. I'll play a Jeweled Lotus, and then crack it for 3 white mana. I'll use it to cast my commander, Winota, and with her out, I'll swing with the Spirit of the Labyrinth at Caleb. I'll get a Blade Historian on the Winota trigger, which I'll send over to Jelly. The Blade Historian gives attackers double strikes, so we'll go to damage. In my second main phase, I'll miss a land drop, but I'll cast a Soul Ring and then follow it up with a Gold Myr. Derek has a much quieter turn, playing a Swamp and then casting an Arcane Signet. Jelly finds a second land on his turn, playing an Island and then casting his commander, Talrand. Caleb is just going to be playing a Zagoth Triome as his land for turn, and then passes. I'll now go back to my turn, where I'll go straight to combat. I'll send the Blade Historian and Spirit at Jelly, with the Gold Myr and Winota going to Caleb. Winota will trigger twice, this time getting a Thalia Heretic Cathar for the first human, and an Esper Sentinel as the second. I'll split them up evenly between Jelly and Caleb respectively, and then after damage, I'll pass. Derek will now play a Clearwater Pathway as his land for turn, but it will come in tap because of Thalia. He'll also play a Champion of the Parish, which comes in tap for the same reason. Jelly now goes to his turn, and he chooses to slow things down by casting Washout, choosing to bounce all white creatures. He doesn't pay for Esper Sentinel, but he does make a Drake on the cast, which comes in tap before Thalia leaves. He'll then play a Wasteland, and chooses to crack it to destroy Caleb's Triome. He's not done with Caleb yet though, as he goes to combat, and swings Talrand at him too. Caleb then goes to his turn, where he'll play on Marsh Flats as land for turn, and then crack it. In response, I'll flash in an Aven Mind Sensor, but Caleb still manages to find a Swamp in his top 4.
Hey, he got him! Got him! Let's go. If you would have missed, I'd have been like, man, Dan hungry for death. Dan ready to die. Ask God while he's broken cooking the pie. I mean, it just is what it is, man.
Caleb will then cast an Into the North, but his luck runs out for the second time, and he fails to find. Back to me now, where I'll try to rebuild my board after the washout. I'll play a Mountain, then recast Winota before going to combat. My Gold Myr and Aven Mind Sensor swing at Jelly, getting 2 Winota triggers, which gets me a Brea's Apprentice, making a Thopter at home, and a Combat Celebrant. After damage, I'll recast Esper Sentinel, then pass to Derek. Derek will play a Mana Confluence as his land for turn, then cast a Gleaming Overseer, amassing on the ETB. This will trigger his Champion of the Parish twice, and then he'll pass. Jelly's up next, where he'll play an island and then swing Talrand and his Drake at Caleb. He has nothing else to do, so he'll pass. Caleb then goes to his turn and plays a Yavimaya as land for turn. He's locked out by the Aven Mind Sensor still, so he accepts his fate and gambles on casting Golos. He still finds a land in the top 4, hitting a Savai Triumph before passing.
Yeah, I could have thought that's whatever monstrosity that it could ever. Yeah.
How is this a thought?
All the doctors look different.
How does this fly?
Hey, look, it flies.
Derek built him himself.
Yeah, man.
Is that
I envisioned my own thought.
Is that one of them satellites up in the orbiting around Earth?
This shit looks like a scarecrow.
Yeah, I thought it was a
Alright,
windmill.
it's time to go to come.
On my turn, I'll start off by going to combat, but Jelly will first cast Reality Shift on my combat celebrant, getting a Drake on the cast and forcing me to manifest a card. I'll go to combat anyway, swinging my Thopter at Derek, Brea's Apprentice and Gold Myr at Jelly, and even Mind Sensor and Winota at Caleb. No one interferes with Winota this time, and so on my triggers I'll get a Pia and Kira Nalar, making 2 Thopters, a Rick, Steadfast Leader, choosing First Strike and Lifelink, and a Glow Rider. Jelly realizes that he's dead, and so he'll block my Gold Myr before dying, and Caleb will block Winota with Golos. On my second main phase, I'll cast a Sanctum Prelate, and I'll name 3 as the mana value that can't be cast, trying to avoid a Toxic Deluge. I'll also cast a Signal Pest, and then pass. We'll go to Derek now, who will cast his commander, Varina, triggering the champion. He'll swing his zombies over at Caleb, getting 3 triggers with Varina to draw 3 and discard 3, gaining 3 life. Caleb has no blocks, and so damage will go through, and Derek will pass. Caleb is up next, but he doesn't have much to do to make a real comeback. He'll play a Polluted Delta and crack it, netting him a Swamp Still. He'll then cast Mutilate out of spite, which ends up wiping out a good chunk of the board. He pays for Esper Sentinel here, but we make a mistake as the tax should have been 3 because of the buff from Rick. Now it's turn 6, and I'll have to rebuild one more time after the Mutilate. I'll recast Spirit of the Labyrinth, then go to combat and swing just Winota at Caleb, with everything else going to Derek. Derek will block some of the damage with Varina, sending her to the graveyard, and Caleb will die. After damage, I'll pass. We're down to just me and Derek left, but with the parting gift from Caleb, he's found a second chance at life. He'll cast a Demonic Tutor now that the Aven Mind Sensor's gone, and then play a Caves of Koilos as land for turn. He'll then cast Songs of the Damned, making enough mana to cast a Living Death. This is going to swap out the creatures on the board for the creatures in our graveyards, and so Derek will end up getting Varina, Plague Belcher, and Nantuko Husk, while I'll get Esper Sentinel, Glow Rider, Gerard Weatherlight Hero, Gold Myr, Signal Pest, and Aven Mind Sensor. Derek will then end his turn by tapping Mana Confluence to cast a Gravecrawler. Back to me, where I'll now recast Winota before going to combat, and I'll swing my board out at Derek again. I'll get 2 triggers, getting a Thopter Engineer with 1, making a Thopter, but I'll whiff on the second. Derek will block the Glow Rider with Nantuko Husk, then sack the Gravecrawler to the Husk before it dies. This drains me for 1, and then I'll pass, hoping to finish Derek off next turn. Derek will now go to his turn and go straight to combat, swinging just Varina over at me. This seems a bit suspicious, so I decide not to risk it and block with Winota. The 2 commanders will trade, and Derek will activate Varina prior to her dying to make a zombie, making me lose a life. After combat, Derek will then cast a Phyrexian Altar, choosing not to pay for Esper Sentinel. Unfortunately, I realize what's going on here, and I don't have any answers in my hand. So now, with the Phyrexian Altar on the board, Derek's able to infinitely recast Gravecrawler, sacrificing it for a black mana, and then recasting it from his graveyard. The Plague Belcher on the board means that each time this happens, I lose 1 life, and so Derek's going to repeat this process until I'm dead. This means that Derek is on a 3-game winning streak and is now your winner for Game 11 of the Grand Tournament. The tables have definitely turned, and Derek has managed to squeak out 3 very close wins in a row after having rotten luck in the first 8 episodes. Things were looking pretty grim for Derek in this particular game once the Winota stacks pieces hit the table, but he was fortunately saved by Caleb's decision to mutilate before he was killed. This allowed Derek to get a keyboard wipe that paved the road for his Gravecrawler combo win, and now Derek is just 1 game away from winning the whole event after being counted out for so much of it. Caleb wasn't given an opportunity to play at all this game, as everyone was still a bit gun-shy from his near win in Game 10. He took a lot of heat in the early game between the Aven Mind Sensor and the Wasteland from Jelly, and since he was unable to establish his game plan, he mostly just withered and died. He still managed to have one of the biggest impacts on this game with his board wipe, which saved Derek and allowed him to reset and win the game. He might not be able to take the same course of action next game, as he no longer has any allies left to assist him if things go wrong for Golos' game plan. Jelly had an okay start to this game, but this is the first time where Talrand really felt completely outclassed. The deck just didn't have the velocity to protect itself against Winota, and he got taken out before he could decide to disrupt the game any further. If Jelly's going to take a 4th game in this tournament, it's going to have to be because he's been left alone long enough to really develop his board. Finally for me, I suddenly found myself behind the gun as I'm now in last place in the standings. This was definitely the strongest showing from Winota, but it ended up falling a bit short because of the Mutilate. Not only did I lose several potential Winota triggers, but without Mind Sensor and the Sanctum Prelate, I was unable to stop Derek from setting up his combo. My hope for next game is that the rest of the table will be so focused on stopping each other that I'll be able to start the snowball without being harassed. This wasn't a super long game, but the biggest takeaway for me was learning from my mistake of choosing the wrong target to focus, or just not focusing on a single target at all. Most of my attacks were split between Caleb and Jelly, but it would have been more beneficial to just focus down Caleb and then turn my attention to Jelly afterwards. At a casual table, it might feel mean to single out a person unprovoked, especially if they're behind, but in a competitive setting where the wins matter, it's often best to just focus down the person whose deck is the biggest threat to yours, or just has the most answers. Assess your threats and figure out who that person is, lest they find a way to come back and make you suffer. Let's head on over to the scoreboard, where we see now that we got 3 players at 3 wins with me still stuck at 2. There's only 2 possible games left, so our only options are either to have me fight back and see one more game, or crown a champion in our next episode. I'll have to make the choice of either Winota or Exodus, but you'll be seeing another episode of Golos and Talrand, as well as the return of Hogak for the first time since episode 2. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to come out victorious in the next episode. That's going to be it for this episode, so thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.